I busted out laughing.
Yeah.
When Kylo Ren's like, I told you your parents were like basically junkies that sold you off.
No.
But they were actually protecting you. I didn't lie to you, but they were actually protecting you. And you're actually a Palpatine. I was like, what?
Let them fight.
Welcome to the Podcastle, guys. It's good to see you again. Glad that you're back.
In the world.
Exactly. Facts.
We're the only one that records. I was going to say in a castle, but as previously stated, we don't record in the castle.
We're the only one that records right outside a castle.
Also true.
You can't dispute that.
No.
You guys like this? Like, comment, and subscribe. Love to hear your thoughts and get some feedback. We're trying a new format. Got 3 mics this time, but sacrifice. We only got 1 camera.
We spent like an hour setting it up, so
yeah, you should better appreciate it. Well, first I'd like to introduce cousin Kyle.
Hello.
Tell him about yourself, Kyle.
His real life cousin.
It's true. No, I'm just
not even manufactured.
Exactly. Made in the test
not
tube.
made in a factory. Worry not. I mean, what's to introduce? I'm just your cousin. I don't do anything online, really.
Okay. You don't have a plug?
I suppose that we're... No, don't look me up on Twitter. I don't use...
His name is Cousin Kyle, and that's all you need to know.
Yeah, I'm Cousin Kyle on Twitter.
He's a Star Wars fan.
We'll see who you find.
He's a Star Wars fan, so naturally...
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up as, like... Star Wars fan, right?
He's a Star Wars fan, so he hates Star Wars.
Yes, as it seems is the trend. So... I would say I know more than the average person about Star Wars, but of course the moment you say you're the expert, there's going to be people all in the comments and tweeting at you like, but did you read this one obscure book that George Lucas never knew about? That was about like this stormtrooper who fought Jar Jar Binks or something? And it's like, no, probably sucks. So I've read a lot of the books and everything, and I've delved into comics and things and played a lot of the games. I would say I'm pretty experienced, more than just the average person that goes around and says, I've seen all the movies, I'm an expert.
Yeah, so...
But I don't know everything, of course.
So my Star Wars knowledge is, I'm an expert because I've seen all the movies. So
that's true.
No, exactly.
Well, it's fine. We're discussing the movies.
I don't know if I've seen any of some of those more obscure prequels.
We're discussing the movies.
You mean like Rogue One?
Yeah.
Have you seen Rogue One?
I've seen Rogue One. But
have you seen Solo?
One. No, I haven't seen Solo.
Okay, so I've seen all the movies. I've seen pretty much all of Clone Wars, the animated show. Mm-hmm. I've seen 2 seasons of Rebels, and I've played Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 on the original Xbox.
I don't think that really adds to any knowledge.
It kind of.
You would be surprised. It might actually. It might come up in this. In fact,
so
because of one of the retcons. Yeah,
so I would say that I would say I have maybe slightly more than average, but like I wouldn't call myself like a diehard. I haven't read any books because I don't like reading.
Well, you've seen Obi-Wan,
and I've seen Obi-Wan. I
haven't.
I've seen Mandalorian. I've seen Obi-Wan, but I haven't seen Visions. So where's that?
Well,
or Bad Batch.
Visions is extra not canon, sadly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, well, I've just seen the movies, so I'm gonna be real with y'all. So yeah,
it's all right. That's what we're talking today.
The original 9.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to get out of the way is we're not talking about the original trilogy, and we're not talking about the original trilogy because
hot takes out of the way. The original trilogy is pretty good.
Yeah, and
they're pretty good movies.
And a hot take is that the prequels and the sequels aren't as good.
Yeah, we should probably get that out of the way. Is original trilogy best trilogy? I think we can agree on that, and that both of the other trilogies are pretty significantly flawed, even as just. Not just Star Wars trilogies, but just movies.
Yeah, and for those reasons, we're just going to steer clear of the original trilogy. I mean, it will come up naturally in conversation, but we're not comparing the original trilogy like we're comparing the prequels to the sequels, even though I don't really like episode 6 that much. But that's the topic for another day.
But yeah.
Also, one other thing I want to talk about is how we're going to be judging it. We're not necessarily comparing it or giving it a value based on how it was received at the time, because, I mean, the prequels have sort of had this sort of resurgence recently when it comes to people like, hey, it's actually good,
right?
Especially compared to the sequels and stuff. But
no. And I know we just said we weren't going to do it, but it was the same thing with Empire. People didn't like Empire that much, or I think reception was weird back in the 70s. Like it's hard to get everything.
There was no Rotten Tomatoes, and so it wasn't.
It seems like people were like, "Oh, this is a good movie," but also things like, "Oh, Vader is Luke's father. I don't like that. Luke's supposed to be a good guy." It was just different back then.
Yeah, but
times change, opinions change.
Yeah, and it's also, I don't know if we'll talk about public reception too much because but it might come up in the sense that certain movies take risks in these trilogies, and how risks aren't necessarily bad because Empire did take a risk. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, and people were a little like, I don't know about this, but then it turned out to be like overall well received through time. Mm-hmm. And so it may not come up, but that's not necessarily the point. That's not how I'm adding value to the movie.
Right.
That's not how we're adding value to them. Well, maybe the fob. I don't know about him, but... he goes along with the crowd. Had a lot of input
so far.
So. Yeah,
I'm just waiting for y'all to actually start talking about the movies.
That's fair.
I have a lot of opinions.
Well, I suppose we get into it.
Let's get into it.
Jar Jar Binks is the best female in Star Wars.
As Jar Jar Binks,
I wasn't there for this gender reveal.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? That's fair. Well, I want to talk about the strengths of the prequels and the sequel, like what do they add to the overall canon, overall lore, overall Star Wars? How do they justify their existence? And I would say one thing that you can't really deny about the prequels is the world building.
Yeah, world building. I mean, cool. It's better in comparison to the sequels only because it was something they did. It existed. It was there.
Like the world was already built, so you didn't have to really world build.
Well, I would even say compared to the original trilogy, that like it expands the world and makes it feel more broad in a lot of ways because you get to see, like, they talk about the political
Senate.
Yeah, they talk about the Senate in the original trilogy, but they didn't have the means to make it. I'm glad that you actually get to see this creatively laid out Senate of like what would a galactic Senate look like in the Star Wars universe, and it looks like huge. It's this big room, and I think that conceptually the way that they portray that is really cool. I like a lot of the ideas that the prequels pokes out in the sense that talking about how like the flaws of a republic, and
I guess that's themes more than like new concepts.
So. Yeah, I guess I'm moving a little away from world building, though. I guess I'll stick on that for a second. But yeah, world building, like I like how it shows all the new worlds. I like how a lot of them feel like creative, like things that you couldn't have done without the advancements in technology. And even though it's dated in a lot of ways, like back in the day, it would have been really hard to do something like a Camino because you just couldn't have done it.
It's true.
And I'd like that George Lucas is like, hey, with the new technology, I'm going to try to make something special and unique. Like, I can't remember that land that Jar Jar Binks is in, but like there's an underwater. Yeah, I mean,
like just like the Gungan area.
Yeah, the Gungan area. Like if it
is pretty cool. I like the design of those.
Yeah, it's like I can see these being like in paintings. Like someone painted these like, oh, this is going to look so good, and even if it doesn't always translate to screen.
And for reference, viewers, just because we're talking about how the prequels kind of set up good world building, there's only so much you can do, even in 3 movies, since you're telling the story that works into the main plot. Traditionally, a lot of the heavy lifting comes in sort of the extracurricular media, where you make the games and the shows like Clone Wars that are supposed to expand on it. And for reasons I won't get into, I think the Clone Wars actually didn't do that great on world building expansion overall, but
I think
that's aside from the point.
Yeah,
the prequels did set it up well.
But yeah, it's like what I like about the prequels too is, I think this adds to its quality. But I think if you watch and you play and get into the extracurricular Star Wars stuff, like the games and the shows, going back and watching the prequels makes the world even feel bigger because you're like, well, I know about this big world. And it enhances the original trilogy in some ways because it makes the original trilogy feel bigger because you're like, oh, this is a broad Star Wars world.
Right.
And that's one reason I really like the prequels is the world
cool planets.
Yeah.
I feel like they all have cool planets to an extent.
Yeah,
all of them
have cool planets.
Yeah, I would say all of them at least show some of the cool planets.
I feel like the sequels are really, really beautiful in comparison to the prequels.
We'll get into the strengths of it. Another thing I was thinking about before we started was prequels are pretty good villains.
Yes.
Count Dooku.
Count Dooku is... I remember a lot of people complaining about how he's introduced and saying like, oh, Count Dooku was like sitting in a board meeting, so lame. But I'm like, I like that. That's how they introduce him.
Yeah, I guess I kind of forgot that's pretty much his first scene, isn't it?
Yeah, in a boardroom meeting. I like that. That's how he's introduced because it shows he's a little more diplomatic. They're introducing a Sith as a diplomat, as someone discussing.
Because you start off, you have Darth Maul. He's more of the silent antagonist. I think he only has a couple lines in the whole thing, just talking to Sidious. Then, of course, you have the Emperor himself, who's very good. What's the actor's name? I can't remember.
Ian McDiarmid.
McDiarmid.
Yeah.
He does an excellent job, of course. That's not an unpopular opinion. Everyone seems to like him a lot in his execution of the character. Yep. we like the memes.
Yeah. I think
another strength of the prequel, memes are better. Still not good, but they're better.
It depends if you like memes in the first place a lot,
I guess.
But I think the prequels has got that. I also think that just a lot of the ideas and themes, getting back to what I was saying when I realized I got to finish world building, but I like there's a lot of cool ideas in the sense that having the chosen one go bad is really cool. It's like, what if Harry Potter was just like, yeah, I'm going to join Voldemort? That'd be, I'll be like, what the heck? That'd be such a plot twist.
No other Star Wars series has had the chosen ones slowly use the dark side, right?
No, not really.
I feel like in one Ray used
okay, we're gonna get into that. Oh boy,
we're kidding. I mean, obviously, like Luke went a little dark at times.
Luke went a little dark,
and I think.
And I know what you mean, though. It's because it's special because Anakin did actually turn to the dark side. And
because, like Frodo, for example, in Lord of the Rings, it's like he almost goes, and at the very end, he kind of goes.
Well, no, I would say he does.
He does at the very end, and Sam saves the day.
Wait, what are we talking about?
Well, Gollum saves the day.
Why are we talking about Lord of the Rings?
Well, I'm bringing it up as like an example.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like...
For the record, Lord of the Rings is better than both of them.
No, facts. I agree.
But I think that it's like when you compare like Anakin, it's like Frodo goes bad for like a minute, maybe,
right?
And then after the ring's destroyed, he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like Anakin goes bad, kills children, like stops the Jedi, starts the Empire, and then is an evil cyborg for like 20-something years.
It's true, and something that is kind of underrated is how that. It actually works well for kind of a saga to have him have been so horrible and evil so long, and then at the end he gets a slight amount of redemption.
Yeah.
And that was also something that I thought was amazing, was how I didn't like the prophecy. It felt off because they didn't mention it much in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
So overall, I don't really like it, but one thing I do like about it is that it makes the way Return of the Jedi ends really interesting because Anakin was the chosen one who defeated the Sith, but not in the way that you thought.
Yeah, and I also like how, and there's a prophecy they said he's going to bring balance to the Force. Another way you can look at it in the prequels is he brings balance, but the Jedi are so like clouded and like set in their ways that they're like, oh, bringing balance to the Force means wiping out the Sith. wiping out the other side. And it's like,
that's not balanced.
That's not balanced.
That's literally just...
And
it also... It's weird. That's one of the things that George Lucas didn't develop that well. Because originally, like, his idea of it was that the Jedi were bringing balance to the Force by just wiping out the dark side.
Yeah.
He was always pretty consistent with that. They said that the dark side was essentially the thing that brought the imbalance to the Force.
Yeah.
So maybe I think balance was not the word he was looking for.
Yeah.
He kept using it.
and another thing that I really like about the prequels, just real quick, is that it doesn't ever feel like they overuse nostalgia. And this is something I have more of a critique with.
Yeah, that's true.
With like newer media, in the sense.
Yeah, the sequels do it, but it's not exclusive to the sequels. It's pretty much in almost all of Star Wars media, and then most of media in general when it comes to remakes, prequels, sequels.
Yeah, if you watch my Halloween reviews, you'll know that I was always like, it felt like Halloween 2018 was like, you remember that from the original movie? You remember that from the original movie? You remember that? And it's like, yo, they got the X-Wings back. Isn't that crazy? And nostalgia itself isn't a terrible thing. I just think when it's overused, it's bad. But like, it's refreshing to watch the prequels and be like, there's like very little nostalgia. It feels like it wasn't focused on
it has its own identity too.
Yeah, it's got a sense of identity, and I think like you can go and watch it and you're not going to be like, oh, it's just like giving winks and nods to the original trilogy the whole time.
Yeah, I would say aside from like the Phantom Menace, they're not throwing in R2-D2 and C-3PO. Like, they don't really have those two, like, even joking around in episodes 2 and 3. They're not a huge deal.
Well, there's that scene in episode 2 where R2-D2 throws, like, C-3PO into a factory.
Never mind. I totally forgot about the factory scene. I actually completely forgot all about that.
Yeah, I wonder why.
It from my brain.
I think George Lucas forgot about it too, because I heard he wrote that scene on his way to the place, and he's like, "Hey, what if we do this?"
No, low-key though, I thought it was kind of funny.
It's funny, but like not for the reason that you want it to be funny.
No, I think it's funny from a stupid standpoint.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to stick to positives for now.
Yeah,
that's not one of them. But I think that
I thought it was positive. Y'all are hating.
I also like that.
That's what I'm here to do.
Going back into George Lucas. George Lucas. Going back to George Lucas utilizing the technology of the time to create something new. I also like.
You can't say his name wrong. He donated $4 billion to charity.
That's $4 billion. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It sounds like the fake politician numbers where it's like I put in 4 million, quadrillion, billion.
I think with George Lucas utilizing the technology, I like that he shows the Jedi's powers.
Yeah.
And I think like in the original trilogy, like it was cool when Darth Vader was like throwing like stuff at Luke in episode 5, and you're like, oh dang, he can lift things with his mind. But I feel like the prequels does a good job of showing like these people are like flying and how trained Jedi would actually fight. Because even in Return of the Jedi, Luke is like, he's just like wailing away. Like,
it's a little dated.
Like, stop disrespecting the goat.
And I'm gonna disrespect him a lot. I think that with the lightsaber effects looking good and them like just doing the flips, and I think Phantom Menace is versus Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul with Obi-Wan. That was terribly phrased, but I like how it like there's impact and they go faster. I think they overdo it sometimes with them moving a little too fast and it looking like a dance.
Yeah, it looks a little too choreographed.
But in Phantom Menace, I think it looks like this happened.
Where'd Star Wars go? Give it back.
There it is.
I want the Star Wars.
I use the Force, but I think that I feel like the overall trilogy, it has a lot of cool spectacle and cool set piece, and I feel like if you were a kid watching Star Wars, which I feel like is the best way to watch Star Wars is as a kid, and that's something you can't ever get back.
I mean, it's always, I think George Lucas admitted it's been appealed to kids.
Yeah, it's like it's hard not to like the prequels as a kid because you get these people doing these flips in the air with bright colored lightsabers and yeah, well, once again, the prequels just got a lot of great like spectacle moments, a lot of iconic moments, like Order 66 is really well done. The John Williams score is really well done. The Jedis, like hundreds of Jedis storming the Geonosis like stadium, crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see.
And another thing that I'm going to compliment is that it feels like there is a cohesive arc for the most part throughout all three movies. Like there was an end in mind of how he wanted his trilogy to go, and they all lead into each other in where you can't say that about other trilogies in Star Wars.
The tone also kind of turns because you start with the Phantom Menace, where it's like the lighthearted one for kids, pretty much.
You don't think episode 4, 5, and 6 leading to 7?
I was saying another trilogy, not that trilogy. Oh, I'm saying that. You
said other trilogies.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
I had an S, doesn't matter. Point is, but
yeah, the Phantom Menace, it starts off as like the lighthearted one kind of for kids, and then you see the dark events at the end kind of change the tone a little bit, so it starts to drop the mood a little bit, and then you still have some fun things in the middle of episode 2. But then towards the end of it, that's just kind of where it drops.
Yeah.
And then episode 3 is pretty serious for the most part.
And I would even say another thing that I think the prequels has over even the original trilogy, but definitely the sequel trilogy, is that it has the best closer, I feel, to the trilogy. And maybe it looks like the best closer when the other two movies in the trilogy weren't that great. But I think that, Revenge of the Sith closes out.
You mean just as like a third movie?
Yeah, it's like a third movie.
I can agree with that.
I think it's like the best third movie of the trilogy. Whereas even, I'm not going to say Return of the Jedi is bad. And
we're also not here to compare those two.
Yeah, we're not. It's just
just as a finale to what they've already created, it works better.
Yeah, and everyone knows Empire is like the better than Return of the Jedi. Or I don't say everyone. I'm sure some people Return of the Jedi better, but like
who?
You'd be wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, it's like I feel that it's the best third movie, but it also feels like a cohesive like finale.
Yeah.
And although I think Return of the Jedi, like I said, not comparing. That's not the point of this, but Return of the Jedi closes out the movie well, but the movie itself isn't that great. But I think it closes out the trilogy well.
I feel like it's the best third movie, but it's got the worst second and first movies.
And that there is a point to that. We'll get to that for sure.
Probably.
But is there anything else anyone wants to say about the prequels? Because I feel like I've been going on about them.
Only in comparison to other things, so we'll probably jump back to it.
We'll jump back to it. But yeah, I think the prequels has got a lot of great qualities that a lot of people don't always give it credit for.
I didn't finish my spiel on kind of villains, I guess.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Which, I don't know. I almost don't want to get into the Emperor just because people know why he's good. It's not hard.
He's in the sequel trilogy too, Kyle. We'll get back to him.
No, stop, bro.
He's
Stop.
that
we don't
good.
talk about that.
How can you not talk about it?
That's why we're here.
We're not here to talk about it.
The episode 9 crawl comes up and it's like Emperor's back. I don't know how.
I would say
the dead speak.
The sequels work better as like a duology than like a trilogy. In my opinion,
okay,
bro.
but we'll get into it. Anyways, you have Darth Maul. Darth Maul's you actually have kind of even different kinds of villains for each of them, where you see Darth Maul, who's just kind of the muscle. He has very little to say, doesn't talk much, whereas you also have the Emperor, who's like a master manipulator and is very good at using the deceit of the Sith to play both sides,
right?
Which is, it's fun to see him and how he interacts in all three movies. And then
absolutely, I
think Count Dooku is one of the most underrated ones, but it's tough because I'll talk about him just in the prequels because objectively his character does change based off later things that are added. But I'm ignoring Clone Wars, which it ruined him. Don't tell anyone I said that. it was just fun going back and watching episode 2 to see how you finally have a villain in Star Wars who's just, I mean, he betrayed the Jedi Order, of course, and he's definitely on the side of the Sith, but he's still really pulling for them. Like, he's not malicious towards Obi-Wan. Like, he's trying to help him, and you really feel that he has a convincing weight behind his words to what he believes.
Right.
And you see things like that. Like, he even in the arena, he keeps giving the Jedi a last chance. Now,
he's not intentionally malicious.
Right. He's not just outright violent.
Like he is in the Clone Wars.
But it's just fun to see that side of a villain. But then the thing is, you might think, oh, he was just doing that to be a villain and be a Sith. He was lying the whole time. That's an interesting thing, though. Like, it's an interesting idea to have in mind while watching it, is you kind of don't know which side he's on. And if he is just lying and trying to do it for kind of PR points in the galaxy, then he does it really well.
Well, and one thing I like about Count Dooku, and you might have already said this, but I like how he talks to Obi-Wan, and he basically tells him, "What if I told you that Republic's corrupt?"
Yeah, he just told him.
He just told him, and it's like, dang, he just let it. He basically spoiled the movie.
Yeah,
and it's like and it's like, why would he tell Obi-Wan that? If you really think it's like, was it a flex? I don't know, but it's cool. I like that he told him that. I like how diplomatic he is. I think Count Dooku is a cool villain.
But yeah, Count Dooku is nice just because you get the sense that he believes what he's saying, and he actually believes. And the way he talks about the Sith is kind of convincing, and not just like, oh, it's powerful, you need power to rule the world. It's like, no, I mean, the Senate's corrupt, which is a true thing. Which is kind of the only... Yeah. That's the only argument the Separatists have ever had.
They're corrupt.
Yeah. That's more Clone Wars issue again.
Yeah.
I will continue to rip on Clone Wars even though I like it overall. Anyways, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons Count Dooku is really good, is he's just a more convincing villain, and you get to watch it with the duality of, does he actually believe what he's saying? Because either way, he's convincing, I think.
Yeah, I think those are all good points, and yeah, I think the villains in the prequels are good. I even like Grievous. Not that he's like a great villain in the prequels, but
I like him, but he's useless in those movies.
I like him. I just think his design is pretty cool, and he
is one of the books I've read, is why I like him. I've read the story, which they will never put into light, but
his time has passed, unfortunately.
Pretty much.
But I like his design, and I like how he has a cool fight scene with Obi-Wan.
He's also kind of a muscle character where he's there to be in the way, kind of.
I also like his voice.
I would say it was underutilized, definitely, though.
He was.
The voice is a good point, because he's had a couple different voices, and I still think the one in the movies was the best.
Yes.
A lot of people would argue the Tartakovsky cartoons, he had a good one. It was just different. He was more Serpentine-like.
I didn't like that one as much.
I don't like that one even overall, or Grievous's interpretation in it necessarily, but
yeah,
it's worth a mention. At least that voice was fine for what they were doing. But I still think the prequel movies had the best voice for him.
I'm not 100% sure where. I think it stopped, but just in case, I'm not sure where it stopped. But we were talking about the fight on Mustafar and how it's drawn out and lengthy, but
which it works for finality.
Yeah,
if there's a place to put it, it's there.
Yeah, and I like how intense it gets, and how like everything's breaking down, and conceptually, I like some of the dialogue that they point at, like the conversation between Obi-Wan. Conceptually, on paper, the bullet points that were put into that conversation, I like the bullet points.
Conceptually on paper. Look at all these things about the prequels conceptually on paper. Yes,
yeah. But the problem is it's on paper, but it's not on, like...
we'll come back to it.
We will get to the prequels' flaws, because I mean, although they're flawless, there might be a couple blemishes. You might
haven't talked about Jar Jar Binks yet.
Well, honestly, if you don't like it, you just didn't get it. You just didn't get it when you watched it.
Yeah, exactly. You just didn't get the movie. You didn't get what George was going for.
That's right.
You didn't understand the vision.
He's a genius like Kanye. But
uh-oh.
Cut that part out.
Yeah, we recorded this, in like 2018. Yeah,
This was recorded.
That's a bad time to record it.
Yeah,
that's potentially worse.
Is it? I'm not up on like Kanye lore.
2016. We're recording this 2016 right now. Actually, one.
Yeah, we just predicted what happens in the sequels.
Yeah.
So.
I thought we're talking about like episode 9, but I don't even think that came out in 2019.
No, it was 2019.
But yeah, I think that's a good point. Big scale battles are really cool, and I think that you gotta give credit where credit's due there. And
it's about all I got, I think, for like an overall.
Yeah. Oh, and one last thing.
Oh my!
Will you shut up? Actually, you need to talk more. But I think having Yoda versus the Emperor is just kind of like, it feels like a fan casting thing where it's like you get Yoda versus the Emperor.
I wouldn't call that a strength personally.
I think it's kind of cool seeing them do certain things. I like how well whatever.
I really don't like Yoda basically at all in the prequels.
I don't like Yoda that much in general.
Just because you're a hater.
No, I think he's well used in the original trilogy.
I think maybe I
like how he burns the sacred text.
Oh yeah.
The sacred text.
Well, do we want to get into the sequels?
Let's get into the sacred texts.
Yeah.
The sacred text.
Are they good or bad?
Exactly.
Yoda would say bad.
Exactly.
Yoda would think negatively on them.
So it comes to, do you trust Yoda or not?
I would say, let's get into the sequels and what I like about them.
Now I'm going to move and cover up this side.
Yes, look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Look, Ray's looking like
looking clean.
Jedi.
I think that's the Last Jedi cover, to be honest.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it's the best looking.
It's got
cover,
everybody on it.
So,
the thing. Yeah. It's got everybody. Wait, how does that have Luke on it?
He's in the Last Jedi.
He is. I thought he died.
It's Rise of Skywalker. He died in the
95% of it.
Are you thinking of Rise of Skywalker?
Oh yeah,
he's still in it.
He was thinking of Rise of Skywalker.
I was thinking of Rise of Skywalker. I got him confused. My bad, y'all. Just cut it out.
Yeah, too bad. Yeah. We're keeping your blunders in here, my man.
No. I need more of you talking, so we need to keep it.
Exactly.
Anyways,
I think the greatest strength that I can give the sequels, and there's more than this,
is the Rey and Kylo Ren chemistry.
Like that kiss.
No.
I'm gonna be honest. As much as I've thought about those movies and as much like thought that's gone into it and everything over the years, I haven't even like considered like their chemistry or anything. It just never really crossed my mind.
I'm not talking.
That's a thing that's happening.
I'm not even talking about romantic chemistry. That's what I'm saying.
I know what you mean. It's just still something.
I was gonna say the visuals, but that's a better point to bring up.
Is gonna be mine.
I was gonna say
you can't argue with it.
The visuals are low key the best visuals in the entire.
Star Wars. It's new.
Well, I know, but I'm saying.
Well, the prequels was new, and they don't visually outclass the original.
Yeah, even back then, it's like it was never use of green screen and CGI that was underdeveloped.
It's really it's well shot. It's got the most beautiful like landscapes and everything. It's got really vibrant colors at points, and it's just like. That one scene, I don't know which movie it was, but when they're on the snow with the red on the red planet that was covered by snow.
Yeah. It was the crate.
Yeah. The red planet covered by snow and the red dust was happening every time they shot it. I was like, that is so cool.
Well, it's salt. Don't you remember the one guy, he picked it up and started eating dirt and he's like, salt, and he spit it out.
Why was he eating dirt?
He's there to show the audience it was salt.
Yeah.
By picking up, eating it, and spitting it out and saying it was salt.
These rebels, man. But yeah, I think I think the visuals,
the salty. Just pick up salt off.
I think that the visuals are really great. The visual effects, like I like how the lightsabers and especially Kylo Ren's is like it ripples. It's not just like one solid texture.
Right.
I like that.
That was so cool. Where it's like almost looks jagged.
It's a very unstable crystal, and
I feel like it represents him well
for how little they have of
how
kind of out of the movie lore and extracurricular lore there is. That was a cool one where it was because Kylo Ren's crystal was broken, so that's why it was all jagged and unstable.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea that they had.
It looked awesome. So
yeah, it also has the Holy Cross.
He's an unstable person. It matches up well.
Even though the cross guards are damn shame, but really,
yeah.
You know what?
It's Star Wars is unrealistic.
He can like pistol whip people with a sword.
Yeah, and I actually think that represents his character well because he's so unstable. I like that his crystal's broken, and so I think cool. that's a.
I just made that point. You can't steal my point.
Just almost killed Kyle. What the heck, bro?
Be the mediator.
Yeah, this is like a UFC fight. Oh, just calm down, bro.
You can't steal my point.
Put down the chair. So yeah, definitely the visuals are a big point of it, and it's not just that. Oh, the graphics are good. It's that it uses kind of visual clarity and design very well.
Composition is
definitely. And I would say The Last Jedi probably uses it the most creatively.
Yeah, so I think I'm a big fan of. I'm gonna get canceled for this, but I'm a big fan of Rian Johnson. I think he makes great movies, and I love his.
Don't come to me hating Rian Johnson until you've seen Knives Out. By the way.
Yeah, it's watch Brick, watch Knives Out, and watch Looper, and come back.
Such a hater.
Yeah, and then say I don't like him just because he ruined Star Wars.
We'll see if I have my piece on what went wrong. Essentially, with that.
I thought the sequel trilogy wasn't even that
bad. The thing is, when you compare it to other movies, it's like if you just not even that bad.
Exactly. Yeah. If you just pretend like the third one doesn't exist, it's pretty good.
Yeah, so true.
But yeah, people on the second one it's amazing.
People, I would say, underrate. In general, people kind of underrate. They're like, oh, but graphics doesn't make it good. It's about the story. Well, movies are the visual media. It is important for it.
And yeah, and I would say like
people trash on things like Avatar, especially now. Yeah, is a popular thing. Which, yes, I get it. You don't remember the main character's name, Jake, by the way. But what it did for visuals at the time, it is a solid thing, and it does matter because
it does. Yeah,
if there's a place for it, it is the movies, the visual media.
Yeah, and it's hard to watch the sequel trilogy and be like, "Oh, my eyes hurt from looking at this movie." Where like, what was it I watched recently? I watched some movie in theaters where some superhero movie where the visual effects were clearly rushed, and I was like, I can't.
Sure, it was a movie.
I think it was. It might have been Thor: Love and Thunder, to be honest.
Maybe.
That movie I was having a hard time looking at sometimes because of special effects.
Bro, it gets worse on Disney Plus.
Oh, it does.
It gets so much worse.
Disney Plus is
She-Hulk. She-Hulk. That's
why I was thinking. Yeah, are you sure it was a movie? Yeah. Are you sure it wasn't a certain Marvel show?
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. That one hurt my eyes a little.
That's another story for another time.
That's another time. Yeah. We almost did a podcast on She-Hulk, but Tanner hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, not enough people saw it. So
yeah, unfortunately,
none of the viewers had even seen it. So
yeah, unfortunately not. But yeah, I think visuals. I know I'm repeating myself at this point. They're great. Choreography is great.
The choreography is good. Don't come at me saying, "Oh, this one scene in the Jedi, the guy's not doing anything." Yeah, a lot of them aren't doing anything in any of the movies, anyways. That's how it happens.
I mean, similar to the prequels. I mean, I feel like it was really well choreographed.
Yes,
it might have been.
They had good fight. They have good fight scenes in a different way, kind of.
And I would say that there's an argument. The
fight scene in The Force Awakens was awesome.
Yeah, and I would say that there is an argument to be made that the sequel trilogy has the best fight scenes. I would say for sure because
low-key it does.
Like,
I don't know why.
Well, like funnily enough,
I don't know that it's the argument I would make, but I would say it's a valid one.
Yeah, I'm saying like you can make that argument, whereas like. Funnily enough, I feel like people would say like the original trilogy might not have the best ones, but that's just because it's older. But I think that I mean, they're still good in my opinion, but
there's a lot that goes into it. Like it still incorporates. We're probably going to keep looping back to visual design, but it matters for that. The cinematography enhances it. I would say sound design, which I would say sound design might be even the best thing about every Star Wars movie. Yeah, but sound design in the sequel trilogy especially was
lightsaber
terribly effective.
Were so good.
Yeah, and one thing I would say that it definitely has. I think it adds a certain edge over the prequels, and in my opinion, is they pull out the lightsabers less frequently. So when they actually do clash sabers, it feels meaningful. It feels more impactful. Like, oh dang!
That's the other thing I would say is that this. I mean, it's kind of true only half the time. Like some of what we said were strengths about the prequels is they have good emotional intuitiveness to big moments.
Yeah,
I was talking to you about this a little bit ago, and they know the gravity that pulling out the lightsaber and having a duel should have.
Yes,
and you could also argue that it puts a little too much focus and kind of takes you out of it, but they know what it means, sort of.
Yeah,
they have a good sense of that.
And one of my favorite moments is in Force Awakens Episode 7 when Finn picks up the lightsaber to fight Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. And Kylo Ren completely outclasses him. But I just think the setting, especially, I know visuals, but the setting is so good. The snow.
Yeah, it's especially because if let's say, parallel timeline, those movies had gone well. Yeah. That's like a really key moment. And it feels like it should be a key moment. Yeah. Where, this was a big thing that happened at the time, where it kind of carries on to what happens in the next movies. And then it didn't happen. But it was still a cool moment.
And I would say, and that's another thing I would like to say is J.J. Abrams, he sets up the mystery of what's going on very well. In a sense, like I feel like he gives you enough sort of what's going on under the surface? Where's this going to go? He puts in a lot of questions in your head that makes you excited to watch the next movies.
I think it's so and so. It's just kind of a directing choice, which I wasn't totally a fan of. Like I kind of always knew the Knights of Ren were never gonna be a thing important in the sequel trilogy, and I would argue that they never were important. But they were always going to be relegated to some, what do they say? I keep forgetting, expanded universe things.
Yeah. What are you saying, Fob?
I think that, I thought it was really cool what Finn's whole character introduced, that, not every stormtrooper is just, this mindless,
right.
We were soldier who's definitely. Just obviously they're brainwashed, but, they still have emotions, they're still human. And they're not all of them are just gonna kill civilians for no reason.
Most of them are the average working class guy equivalents in the galaxy.
Exactly.
Well, and I think George Lucas, I heard this somewhere, I could be wrong, but he originally wanted the stormtroopers to sort of evoke Nazi vibes, and so I think it is an interesting idea to say hey, and just because you were born in Germany or raised a Nazi or you were raised doesn't mean that you have to be a bad person as well.
Which for reference, we are just saying, as a storytelling thing to do.
As a storytelling device.
Regardless of what your opinions on that actually are.
We're not saying the first order are Nazis.
Yes.
You can do interesting things with that, narratively.
Exactly. And there's a movie I love called Kingdom of Heaven. It's directed by Ridley Scott. And there's the king in the movie says that a king can move a man, but a man is in charge of his own soul. So you don't have to listen to the king because you're in charge of your own destiny at the end of the day. Right. You can choose not to do something horrible. And I think that
Finn did choose that.
Yeah, and I would say that is maybe the best idea that came out of the sequels, that the coolest thing that they did.
Even in that movie, it was executed well.
Yeah, it was.
That part of it was done correct.
And in Force Awakens, Finn is I think he's my favorite character in that movie. And so
do you agree with that?
I think that he's a really interesting character. He's funny, but he's likable. And he has an arc of being I just want to run away.
Where is he? Oh,
yeah. His head's cut off.
Yeah, poor Disney.
This picture is racist.
Yeah. I mean, Disney.
There's two black characters in the entire trilogy, and they've cut them in half.
Look, Mace Windu's getting cut off too.
What is this? What is this?
Why is he so small?
This is racism.
I think there's 3 in the sequel trilogy.
Let's not focus on the fact that I chose the picture. Anyway.
2 or 3, I guess. Yeah,
but
one for each movie.
But yeah, I think that Finn's a great character. I really like him. And I think that, well, he's a great character in Force Awakens. And I think that he adds an interesting element to Star Wars. So that's a good point you brought up there, Fob. Moving past visuals,
it's hard to then talk about the overall strengths of them, because then they're pretty much split up into individual movies.
Yeah, and that's
already getting into a weakness, is that it's not a cohesive trilogy.
Yeah.
Everyone obviously knows what's. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably know what went into.
There was either no roadmap or
design of it.
There was no roadmap for where they wanted it to end, or they had a roadmap and they scrapped it.
What else can we say?
Yeah.
Last Jedi had good concepts. You have the idea of at least something that was kind of built up well was the Force dyad.
Yeah,
that was one of the rare things that was fairly consistent throughout them, is how that was built up.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. You mentioned it to me that it's a thing that it pre-existed in other Star Wars lore, but the thing about
the sequel trilogy did not invent that.
But they introduced it to the masses and stuff.
They did do some things with it that were original. For instance, at least I don't recall of any time when you had a fight scene like you could say it's the Force dyad fight scene where Rey and Kylo were fighting on, I don't remember the planet Rey was on, but Kylo was on.
Yeah, she was on some sort of planet. That's where they're extracting like the Sith information from C-3PO or something.
Yes, it was that one. Yeah. And then Kylo was on his ship, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were destroying things around them. It was very cool to see. Which, I mean, you could get into the physics of how that should work or something, or even based off what they say, but come on, Star Wars, we're not doing that with even the original trilogy, where they go into space without helmets, just saying. Just helmets.
And one thing that, this is maybe more mixed for me, but I'll talk about the positive element of it, is it feels like a return to form. Like if you were sort of bothered by how out there the prequels are, I think and you're just a big fan of the original trilogy and you just hated the prequels, you're going to be better served.
Going back, the biggest strength and weakness of The Force Awakens is how it kind of tries to recapture that magic from the original trilogy. And obviously it's like, you go back, it's a nostalgia trip, but it's also like the last thing we had was the prequels. So kind of needed to gear people back into it.
A return to form. And it's like, as I know I've complained about nostalgia, but it is hard to deny that when you're watching Force Awakens for the first time in theaters after not seeing a new Star Wars movie.
That's what I'm going to say. I think all Star Wars movies are good theater experiences because that's what they're built for. Yeah. I've enjoyed almost every single one in theaters.
Yes, and I've never seen, the only ones I ever saw in theaters were the new ones. I didn't get to watch the prequels.
Like, we'll agree that we hate Episode 9, but watching it in theaters was fun. Even in theater, I'm like, this ain't great, but I was still having a good time.
I actually can't attest to that for myself.
That's fair, but most of them still.
I think Tanner walked out of the movie theater during Episode 9.
Well, I'm just saying I had fun, and then in general, Star Wars movies are fun in theater.
Well, I will say one of my favorite things about the entire trilogy was basically in The Last Jedi, how Rey and Kylo were like connecting.
You seem to really like how are they connecting?
Because no, I'm talking about like specifically in the scene where they're in front of that evil dude with the cracked forehead.
Snoke.
Yeah. I thought
the greatest Star Wars villain I've ever seen.
What you mean is they do have a good dynamic.
Yes,
yeah. What I'm trying to say
is
it's
funny because they're not totally perfect or great characters, especially not Rey, but they somehow have like a good chemistry and dynamic.
Like I like the scene where he betrayed Snoke was one of the most hype scenes I've seen in the entire trilogy. That was probably the most hype scene.
I guess like it's hard to go over.
That was one thing that it was kind of a subvert expectations, which would probably come up a lot with The Last Jedi, but that was I think a good way of subverting expectations.
So I think it's good. That
particular example.
That one, The Last Jedi, is such a like mixed bag for me, but it's mixed not because the whole movie's mediocre, which I would think about Rise of Skywalker, but because they have so many
highs, low lows,
very highs, very low lows, but like the highs of Rise of
next, how will Hunter compare this to Spider-Man and or Sonic?
I feel like the highs of Last Jedi.
I mean, I could compare it to Spider-Man 3, but you know,
the highs of Last Jedi is like better than the basic. Almost the highs of Last Jedi. Like I like Last Jedi more than the first and second prequel movies. Like easily, like it's not even close. That's the problem.
I would say so.
Yeah. I think that but I guess it's like Kyle said, it's kind of hard to just talk about the sequel trilogy as a trilogy because a lot of it feels so compartmentalized, which you can't say about the prequels. But I guess I'll just talk about, we talked a lot about Force Awakens going in The Last Jedi.
Right.
I would say that Last Jedi has a lot of really good ideas. I like that Luke, I like what they did with Luke. I like, although I can understand why people were upset and they find it unrealistic for Luke, it made sense to me why he's kind of become a hermit, and why he would make a brash, irrational decision in the spur of the moment.
I don't know what you're talking about because I haven't seen Return of the Jedi. I don't know why he would do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why he would try to kill one of his loved ones. He wouldn't do that, dude.
And then realize he was wrong.
No, Luke wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it makes sense for his character, and I like that he feels very guilty for what he's done, and he's hermited, and he's looked into the Jedi, and he's like, the Jedi have a past of failure, which is true. You know, the Jedi aren't perfect.
They do suck.
Which is true. And I mean, I would say that's the one thing that kind of connects the prequels to the original trilogy to the sequel trilogy is that, you know, the Jedi weren't perfect, and Luke is realizing that. And you see why the Jedi aren't perfect in the prequels, and he's bringing it back in the sequels in The Last Jedi.
It's funny, depending who you ask, even among people who hate The Last Jedi, they'll say either the best or worst thing about it was Luke.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. We haven't gone into this because I am the resident Last Jedi stan.
So you probably don't know this.
Not in the sense that
Last Jedi is Kyle's favorite Star Wars movie.
He's gonna say it's not true.
It's his favorite one.
Yeah, I will say The Last Jedi was probably my favorite of the sequels.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would agree, and I'd say it's probably the one I prefer to watch.
Your favorite Star Wars movie? Of course you agree.
That's not true. Okay, so to set the record straight, I'm gonna go through my take on Last Jedi real quick. So I watched that movie, and it came out, and I liked it. Is it? No. So, yeah, it was just really confusing to see a lot of people just lambasting it. And I thought it was... Because when you watch things like the original trilogy, I think especially Return of the Jedi, things you complain about Luke doing happened in Return of the Jedi. So, like, people complain that Luke threw away his lightsaber. He did that in Return of the Jedi. People complain that he lost control and tried to kill Kylo, which he, depending on who you believe, he kind of didn't actively try to. It was just a thought that crossed his mind, and people are like, oh no, Luke wouldn't think that. He's a pure soul.
What?
Except people believe that, maybe not that exact thing, but people will believe that, oh, he wouldn't do something like that, when in reality it's kind of a thing that just happens to people, is you have those kind of dark thoughts.
Yeah.
And he had it when Darth Vader started taunting him, and he tried to kill him.
I was about to say, like Luke was kind of losing it in the original trilogy. Closer to the end of the trilogy, I feel like Luke was starting.
Well,
so I think what people say is that oh, that part of Luke's life has passed. That part of his character development is over and done with.
Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily agree with. I think that's delusional to say that you can't keep dealing with the hardships of the world and it won't break you down eventually.
Well, and I would like to just jump in and say that I feel like that's a one consistent through line throughout the prequels, original trilogy, to the sequels, up until Rise of Skywalker, I'd say. But is that like fear is a path to the dark side, and Luke has always struggled with the dark side. That was something that was made apparent in Empire Strikes Back, that Luke has a pull to the dark side, which makes sense because Anakin had a strong pull to the dark side, and he's his father's son. And so it makes sense that Luke, being afraid of what he sees in Kylo Ren, has a brief moment of turning to the dark side. Something that we have consistently seen Luke do in movies. And so, yeah.
Yeah. The rest of my take on The Last Jedi.
Y'all remember in The Rise of Skywalker when Rey just kills Chewbacca?
Yeah, dude.
yeah,
like so sad.
Yeah.
I did walk out during part. I had to go to the bathroom during part of that, but it was sad when Chewbacca died there and didn't come back for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It was so terrible.
He definitely didn't come back.
He definitely never came back.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's so sad. I got to take a break real quick.
No, that scene was like when I first watched it, I was goofy. Just like, did you just kill Chewbacca?
It was like my reaction was, what?
Chewbacca.
Oh, I gotta finish my take so I don't look foolish. I don't want to look foolish on the internet and get clowned on. So, Last Jedi has bad things. I don't think any of us are going to disagree with that.
Yes,
definitely has a lot of like pretty significant flaws and flawed execution.
For sure.
I still like a lot of what it did. I think it did a lot of good things.
Sure did.
Better than Empire Strikes Back. I'm joking.
Yeah, I think it introduces the Force connection.
That I never said.
The Force connection between Kylo and Rey, which was interesting. It introduces the idea that Kylo might come back to the light side, which they sort of capitalize on. I like
that. There was a time there when, I mean, everyone feels like a lot of people thought this, where we kind of didn't know where Rey and Kylo were going to end up. Yeah, at least in The Last Jedi, you kind of thought most of the way through The Last Jedi were like, they might switch sides. Yeah, that was a big theory.
And that we're getting into my sort of negatives or missing the mark section soon with that. But I think that Kylo and Rey, they have this, as Tanner says, this sort of this energy to them where you're not even, it's like you don't want to see them kiss. You definitely don't want to see that. But
that's the last thing you want to see.
That's the last.
It is. That's right. Memories. It is the last.
Oh, the memories.
The Last Jedi. No, I'm kidding. I think
the Last Jedi kiss.
Oh gosh.
It's like someone's fan fiction of
that kiss.
When she wakes up, in like Rise of Skywalker after like Kylo heals her because he knows how to do that somehow, and she's smiling at him. I'm like, oh, like where is this going?
And then after they kiss, Kylo Ren just fucking dies, and it's just like, bro.
Have you ever seen the movie Mars Needs Moms? Have you ever seen that movie?
I have, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's how everyone probably would answer if they've seen it, or maybe they haven't. But it's unfortunate that's. I have to relate that last scene to Mars Needs Moms, but there's a scene in Mars Needs Moms where the mom and the kid, they're on Mars and they only have one space helmet and they gotta switch it back and forth, and they're like, no, I'm sacrificing myself for you, and then kid's like, no, I'm sacrificing myself for you, and then blah blah blah, and then that's what the Rise of Skywalker does.
Yeah.
So,
oh my goodness.
Congratulations, J.J. Abrams, you stole from Mars Needs Moms.
I'm
not a good thing from it.
I feel like.
What are the positives of sequels again?
Hold on. I feel like
podcast number 3.
I feel like one of the main problems with Rise of Skywalker 2 is it's really up to the viewers, and it leaves up a lot to you figure out what happens. Yeah. For you to figure out what happens, because they don't tell you anything.
We haven't finished the positives yet.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry,
Last Jedi positives. Still good planets and everything, but like you said, everything.
Planets are awesome.
Well. Yeah, planet is good. I think
Crate was cool.
Best
Whatever
planets.
you think of the Canto Bight scene, I think the Canto Bight planet was good.
I do. I think it was good.
It was a very cool one to see, because you don't really. I guess Coruscant was the closest you got to a very high-end, a lot of cool visual design. We've talked about visual designs, of course.
Yeah.
What were some other good things? It's all the ideas, right? It's the ideas that The Last Jedi floats forward, which something it kind of shares in common with the prequels is that it sets up good things, doesn't execute them that well.
Yes.
Where, it brings up this idea of, the past, what we thought in the past about the Force isn't true. So we need to bring an actual balance, and how this new idea that the balance in the Force is brought by having an equal number of Jedi and Sith, or maybe finding somewhere in between, which, by the way, was in the original script for Episode 9, was they were going to do essentially a gray Jedi where you were going to combine aspects of
and one of the greatest moments is when Luke's lightsaber, or Anakin's lightsaber, which represents the past, it's a symbol, gets destroyed. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dang, this is like a powerful moment.
It's so crazy because that lightsaber is iconic, bro. Like, that lightsaber, it was
I do
like
wish that they would stop talking about it, because it's not an important thing. Like,
but it was
it's funny because that lightsaber, it's like the only special thing about it is that they were holding it at one point, which like Luke eventually lost that lightsaber. Anakin lost his all the time.
Yeah,
he kept losing it like every movie.
Lightsabers.
You know, I think
so many different ones, and it's like he just, when you look at the lightsaber designs, he just has the basic one. It's not special.
I feel like we really want to go into the negatives, because does anyone else have anything nice that they want to say anymore?
No, yeah, I do. Well, I have one last nice thing.
The kiss.
Shut up! No,
Rose and Finn.
Yes.
No. No. We're gonna talk about that. No, at the end, at the very end of Rise of Skywalker, not the part you're thinking of. At the very end of Rise of Skywalker, I love the design of at the very end of Rise of Skywalker. I really like the design of Rey's new lightsaber.
Yeah.
That was the cool. That was the last good thing I had.
She should have used it for
the majority of the movie.
Well, also planned in the original.
You know what?
That was probably her original lifesaver.
It was.
So all right,
you see concept. Okay, so I do have other things. So other things that were cool about it. I mean, I could sit here and try to. I'll actually save like my, what would you say, apologism for when we get to the actual downsides, but something I do like about the Canto Bite scene is it is kind of cool to see Finn reacting to a lot of things. I think John Boyega actually plays up a good sense of wonder.
He's got a fish out of water sense to him since he was conditioned by the Empire.
That is
his whole life,
one of the few things about the Canto Bite kind of arc, is that was a really fun thing to see, is him being alive and reacting to the world like that. And you get to see DJ was a really underutilized character who brought a lot to the table. Yeah. Plus that whole scene, it sort of evokes the kind of classic feel of like, oh, we're going on this adventure and going through these different challenges.
Yeah, and I don't want to
good to that.
I don't want to even get too political, but like that scene brings up cool ideas like the military industrial complex of where like people profit from war, so they try to make war happen. And you
rebels
see that,
are buying from the same people the Empire buy from.
Exactly, and like that happens. It doesn't go anywhere, which is unfortunate because it's a really cool idea. But like that's something you've seen in our world a ton.
You see it in our world. It's kind of
happening right now.
The original trilogy doesn't talk about it. The prequels, that's one of the things that sets up the world building. And so those are the good things.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say now, I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny at the end of Rise of Skywalker when she's burying all the lightsabers. Like, she's burying all the lightsabers. She's putting down the sword.
Optimus Skywalker.
No, we're getting to that. But she's putting away all the lightsabers away. She's burying them. She's ending the violence. And then like after she buries them, like, oh, she still has another lightsaber. That's not as symbolic as that.
Yeah. No, it was cool that she was making her own thing after that. But that should have come earlier.
That should have happened in like the Last Jedi.
Yeah,
I feel like that should have happened in the Last Jedi. And it was one of the coolest lightsaber designs because it looked different. The handle looked different. The color was different. I've never seen a yellow lightsaber before, except in like the Clone Wars.
Right.
So like, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah. So, like, my overall thoughts on this, positives on the sequels is it looks great, visuals are good, and it's got a lot of cool ideas.
Rey Skywalker.
I feel like there was something ahead for. There was something good about the Rise of Skywalker. I swear there was.
Rey Skywalker.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You were waiting for him to kiss. I could see
nothing.
in your eyes.
The kiss, right?
I guess some of the planets were still cool. I like the one that they went to where it was they had the festival going on.
The planets were consistently cool.
It was like Tatooine with some personality.
Even the snow planet they went to, I like basically nothing that happens on that planet, but it was a cool planet.
Exactly.
All right. Quick plug for the Lego Star Wars Skywalker
All right,
saga.
give me the plug, man. Get the plug out of here.
We haven't had an open world Star Wars game in so long. They've been putting these planets out for now 20 years, all these cool planets, and you never get to explore any of them really. And you finally get to do that in the Skywalker saga, and it's so nice. It makes the sequels almost worthwhile, being able to actually go and explore these planets.
Lego
Star Wars, the
Have you played
Skywalker
it?
saga.
No.
Why don't you go play it then?
Better give it a try.
You got to give it a shot.
No, you can't be using a Lego game.
I absolutely can.
No.
You can't stop him. He's a grown
Absolutely
adult.
can.
Unlike you.
No, that makes it worse. That makes it worse.
Let's go into the negatives. Should we get into the negatives of the sequels or the prequels first?
Well,
because we're already on the sequels.
I have to leave soon. Let's go for the sequels.
All right, sure. let's get the sequels out of here, man.
Poor planning. So,
or they scrap the plan. One or the other.
Yes, both. A lot goes into what went on behind the scenes, and essentially it all has to do with. I mean, it's Disney. It all has to do with the public backlash that they got. So they released The Force Awakens. People are like, it's good, but it's a little too much nostalgia. You might want to take some risks. And then Rian Johnson said, "Oh, you want risks?
I'm gonna take some risks."
Oh, you want risks?
Y'all want risks?
Yeah.
So the last, it's just that they have J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson have had such different ideas on what, besides what they might tell you, had very different ideas with how to take that trilogy, and they might even thought of that they had similar ideas, but it's a different thing as a viewer watching it. It's like we're receiving a lot of different things from this, and then, I mean. There's I would do your research and look into a lot of what went on behind the scenes and what inspired the decisions behind that. But essentially, like, The Rise of Skywalker was a totally different movie before the reception of The Last Jedi. Which is so sad to see. It had so many good ideas.
And I would say that I think the biggest problem that I've noticed, especially just now, yesterday when I rewatched both of them, is the juxtaposition between watching Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker back to back is jarring.
Biggest lie J.J. Abrams told was that, it had my exact idea in mind. Or maybe it was true at the time, but
the problem is,
what came out was totally different.
I feel like I missed that. I feel like there's supposed to be like 2 more movies in between them because to like explain what's happening. Because like
one of the strong examples is in the director's commentary for The Last Jedi. You have Rian Johnson saying essentially why he took Luke the direction he did. He said, "Well, I knew fear couldn't be the thing keeping him on that island because Luke's not a terribly cowardly person. That's one of the consistent things about him is that he's actively trying to solve the problems and like go out in the world and do that. So it couldn't have been fear. He had to think he was doing the right thing.
Right.
And then Luke says in The Rise of Skywalker, it was fear that kept me on that island. It's like, no. Wrong.
No.
Incorrect.
Stop.
Yeah, and it's like there's so many things that the last Jedi does that I'm like, that's cool. That The Rise of Skywalker immediately is like, nope, you're wrong.
You have Rey's parents. Rey was supposed to be a nobody, and then they were like, actually, they were these good. They couldn't have been just leaving you. You were good. They were good. They were all valid people.
Yeah, no, I busted out laughing when
it's unbelievable that they went back like that. Like,
I don't understand why like in the Last Jedi, I feel like, or I don't know if it was The Last Jedi, but I'm pretty sure it was, where Kylo Ren made a huge point of her being a nobody. Like you are a nobody.
That was also kind of funny.
One of the
your parents are nobodies.
That's fun.
Your parents
not
are
to me.
You're a nobody. Your parents are nobody. You're not. You're basically nothing. You know, like you're not from anywhere special.
Remember the part in The Rise of Skywalker at the beginning where they're at the festival and they're like, "Oh, what's your name?" She says, "Ray who?" And they're like, She's like, "I'm just Ray." It was so good.
It was so good.
And then they completely scrapped it.
And then they said Ray Skywalker.
You're Palpatine, actually.
No.
Yeah, no, you're a Skywalker. There's 5 characters in Star Wars.
Nah, man. That was just like terrible. I busted out laughing.
Yeah.
When Kylo Ren's like, I told you your parents were like basically junkies that sold you off.
No.
But they were actually protecting you. I didn't lie to you, but they were actually protecting you. And you're actually a Palpatine. I was like, what?
I thought that was so dumb because, like, I thought they made a whole point about how
it's cool.
She was nobody, and I was like, that's a cool concept that someone that a nobody can be somebody.
Die.
Exactly.
Especially like we were so tired of these characters being related to everyone in Star Wars,
and then they do it again, and it's just like, why?
It was a cool idea that in Star Wars. Congrats, you're not related to anyone. You know, it's cooler if she's not,
because it's like you're a nobody that's gotten the Force, and you don't have to be related to. It's not like a bloodline thing.
It doesn't belong to you.
Yeah,
anyone can have the Force.
Anyone can have the Force, but apparently not.
And I think the other thing about Rise of Skywalker is it did please a lot of fans early on, but I feel like it retroactively makes Force Awakens and especially Last Jedi
I think it
worse.
Tried to, but
yeah,
it's weird because you think that the Rise of Skywalker apparently had like the good viewer reception, and I don't know who liked it.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever met someone who likes the Rise of Skywalker.
I have.
Maybe we're just terminally online, but
there was
it's just I guess it's just the masses, because you can imagine.
Yeah.
If you're not that into Star Wars, maybe you just watch the movies. You'd probably not like The Last Jedi. You'd probably like The Rise of Skywalker because nostalgia trip and everything. So it's probably like a lot of the people that are just kind of into it and don't have to think that hard.
Well, and Cousin Sloan really likes, or not I would say really, but she likes Rise of Skywalker. Some might even say it's her favorite Star Wars movie, but no, it's.
I'm sure you would say that a lot of people have strange favorite Star Wars movies.
You know, it's just how I am. But I would
like. He likes the Clone Wars. His favorite Star Wars movie is his favorite. Your favorite Star Wars movie is the Clone Wars movie. That's what I think.
That's the real plot twist.
No,
Hunter, your favorite movie is actually the
Christmas special.
Yeah,
the Star Wars Christmas.
Unironically, kind of like
your favorite movie.
I bet if I watched it, would be
the Christmas special. Has a good Boba Fett voice.
His favorite Star Wars. His favorite Star Wars movie is Solo. Yeah.
I think
one of my favorites.
I think the poor.
Up there.
I also would. I have to say,
anyways,
another big flaw about the sequel trilogy is that it feels somewhat soulless at times, in the sense that
it feels artificial.
It feels like it was Star Wars was thrown into the machine. The
Last Jedi at least has identity.
That's what I would say. The Last Jedi is the only one that doesn't feel like that. It's funny.
A lot of people would disagree. They're like, oh, I think a lot of people the Star Wars fan thing where you have a lot of people hate the Star Wars thing that came out, and then there's a small vocal minority who's like, oh, I didn't like the diversity that they forced into it.
Diversity? What diversity?
In The Last Jedi. I mean, they would say it about like.
But I don't really understand what they mean by that, because I feel like.
I mean, people were making racist comments to the Kelly Marie Tran.
It was Rose
actress, yeah.
And
of course, to get that.
Well, the problem is
it's always a vocal minority.
You have most of the people criticizing Rose's character because she's bad, and then you have a couple people being like racist, and so then it's like
it gets
well, if you don't like
Disney
Rose, then you're racist.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with Obi-Wan.
I do not like I do not like Rose's character at all, but I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about her race, bro. I'm gonna be real.
I like her sister. Her sister has a good scene in that movie, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it's really just that
the
movie
first time I even
comes
thought
down.
about her being Asian is when you guys just talked about it 5 seconds ago.
Yeah,
I mean, people like Donnie Yen in Rogue One.
Yeah.
Donnie Yen.
Yeah, I think that sometimes when people get upset, they end up throwing out things that they don't really mean online anyways, and some people do mean it.
Or maybe they mean it, but otherwise it's not the real criticism of that
It's not
movie.
the real criticism. I just think that I think that's another thing is, this is another huge one. Finn's character is trash in both Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, and he's completely different in both those movies. And
well, the thing with him and Rey is that's something the prequels does better is you kind of know what you know about those characters, and you can speak very confidently on these are their character traits, and you can talk about those characters and you know who they are. Yeah. I don't know who Rey and Finn are. I don't know what kind of character Rey is supposed to be.
People are gonna hate on me for this one, but
I don't know what Finn.
I think Rey's character, everyone's gonna say, is flat and bland, and it's like no personality. I actually like her character.
Why?
Because
what are some character traits of Rey?
She's strong.
That's not a character. That's not a. That is a physicality.
You just said she's a strong, independent woman. That is. What does that mean?
Independent. I like how she's got like, it's kind of hard to explain, but I like her emotion.
Like what?
Like when she's it's hard to explain when y'all are pressing me like this.
It's hard because there's nothing there.
I mean, Daisy Ridley was a good actress, and
she's not a bad.
She displayed emotion correctly when she was supposed to, but it's that character's emotions didn't make sense or were consistent at the time.
No, I think a big issue is that.
I would say that's another thing is...
Alright, I gotta go.
Alright. Well, I'm gonna have to stand the sequels, which will work, because once we talk about the flaws, I can be the apologist.
Yeah. Alright, we lost one, but we're good.
Alright.
Alrighty.
So, what was I saying? Talking about Rey's character.
Yeah, Rey's character, she doesn't have very many character traits that are identifiable.
She's a very passive character. She's not making a lot of decisions with things happening to her, which is an overall problem with media overall. It's a common thing now.
Yeah, and I think that with Rey is, like, if you wanted to compare all the protagonists, I guess I won't Luke, but I mean, I think Luke's a better protagonist than Rey. I
think Anakin's a better protagonist than
I think Anakin at least has a lot of flaws, and I know a lot of people are like, well, Anakin's a Gary Stu, and so is Rey, but like,
no, I would argue Obi-Wan is.
Yeah, but the difference is Obi-Wan is not the main character.
That's also true, and he's meant to be like the more mentor character who's not growing and learning.
Yeah, exactly. That's not his function of the story.
I mean, by that logic, Yoda's a Gary Stu because he's powerful.
Yeah, but
they have a different meaning in the story.
Anakin is, like I said, once again, this is a problem with the prequels, and we'll get into this, is on paper, Anakin's character makes perfect sense in the sense that he's very overconfident, and that is his problem.
I guess that's the thing with the prequels.
Yeah.
The benefit of the prequels versus the sequels.
Yeah.
You see what they're going for with the prequels.
Yes.
You see what they're trying to say, and the execution kind of fell flat. The prequels, or the sequels, I mean, just because there were so many different direction choices.
Yeah.
And just weird dialogue choices. It's just hard to tell what they mean.
Oh. Yeah.
A benefit to the sequels. I would say the acting was overall better.
Right.
Because you might say that there were really weird times.
Right.
I mean, you could say that about the prequels too, is that they weren't given much to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Neither were given much to work with. I would argue that the sequels, they somehow evoke better emotion.
Yes. And that's the thing is...
They also had more popular actors, sort of. Aside from Daisy Ridley. Well, I guess not.
No, it's not even that. It's more like, I would say with the prequels, just directly comparing them, is that like the ideas of the prequel are enough where you can watch it and you can be like, yo, these are cool ideas that you can process and think about. The sequels give you nothing to really digest overall, but they have that sort of like emotion, and it's just because of the way it's filmed. I think it goes back to visuals and performances, the mise-en-scene, everything in frame and stuff. You never feel like, at least in my opinion, you never feel like in the sequels that there's a green screen behind them, and that where that happens almost exclusively all the time.
You're very drawn into it, I would say. Even if you hate it, like you're pretty drawn into what's happening.
Yeah, and
which goes in their direction, I guess.
But it almost feels like, and I think that's a testament to J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson as directors, their ability to draw the eye of the audience. Like you watch those movies on mute, there's a lot of powerful shots, and you think, oh, this is something that's important, but it's almost like a fake importance because everything visually is telling you this is important, and the way they're acting says it's important. But when it's not important, it's like, or there's not anything really being said that's impactful, or nothing's being led up to, it's disappointing. Where it's like if you combined the visual, the direction, not the dialogue necessarily, but you know what I mean, like the more naturalistic dialogue of the sequels with the ideas of the prequels, and executed it more precisely, you could.
I would say there are scenes that were executed about as best as they could be, and it was just that the foundation wasn't there. So that could be a thing that has opposite with the prequels.
Yeah, I think that's another thing is that
it's
you
like
could.
The direction was there, the acting was there, was trying to be convincing, but what it was founded on wasn't working.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with the sequels is, like I think they have scenes that stand out more. Where there's like, as bad as it sounds, the prequels always have sort of a crap factor to them.
I'd say dull.
A dull.
They have a dull feeling. They're not very evocative.
Yeah, whereas like you can take individual scenes from the sequels and be like, oh, this is really good. Like when Luke's talking about.
That's the thing is they underutilize actors too, and I think it's a big thing. It could be a lot of things. The editing was poor. I guess we're getting back into kind of prequel flaws too.
Yeah.
The editing.
We can go back and forth now, I think.
Yeah. The editing was very poor. And that was the biggest thing was because George Lucas's wife was his editor.
Oh, she was? I didn't know that.
And then he got divorced, and then the prequels came out. So it was obviously a big factor as to why things feel off. Is that
right? I
mean, we've talked a lot before. Editing really makes the movie.
No, it does.
Because they film a lot of stuff, but only fraction makes it.
One of my biggest problems with The Amazing Spider-Man, I have to bring it back, is the editing. Is the editing. They edit that movie like just weirdly, and it ruins a lot of the scenes.
And you see a lot of times in the prequels, it's just because they're Jedi and they're supposed to lack emotion in that time.
Yeah,
they have good actors they put on there, and then their lines don't work, and it seems like they're just told to act dull.
Yeah,
Liam Neeson's an amazing actor, but he has the same tone of voice throughout almost the whole movie.
Well, I would actually say that I'd actually push against that. I think that Liam Neeson as a Qui-Gon Jinn, I think he's the best part of the movie, and I think
so too. It's just that he can't carry that.
Well, but I would even say I think his performance is good. I don't think he churns out as good of performances as, like, let's say the sequel trilogy, but I still think that it's a good performance. He brings sort of a calming presence while also having enough like charm and personality of like he's straying away from the order, but he's not a dull rock.
That too. That's a good thing that they brought up.
Yeah, but also like he doesn't feel like he's like this unsophisticated guy. Like he doesn't feel like Luke at the end of the day. And
it's not very refined.
And so Qui-Gon's character as a mentor, I believe works for me, and I think his performance works perfectly.
I think that's something Obi-Wan was missing for me. Is he needed kind of that moment where he looks back and thinks on how great a mentor Qui-Gon was.
Yeah.
Thinks to himself, he has like some introspection of why am I losing Anakin like this?
Yeah, and you see him treating Luke like that in the original trilogy. He is more fun and whimsical, right? In the original trilogy, and I think a lot of it's like rearing a child or parenting is like if you hold on to your child with an iron grip, they'll often slip away. Mm-hmm. Not that that's what he did fully.
You need to do better to guide them.
Yeah.
Feel like you're not guiding them.
Well, and it's like if let's say you have a kid or something and they're saying I'm struggling with these thoughts, like Obi-Wan's advice was stop doing that because it's bad.
Stop.
Instead of like trying to empathize with him. And I feel, and that's another cool idea that the prequels brings up.
This one?
Oh, no, it's this one. It's another idea that the prequels bring up. It's just not maximized as much as it could have been. It's very frustrating for me because it's like you think about it and that's a cool idea and I can think about that idea, but at the end of the idea is not the idea, but at the end of the day, it's like it's still giving me ideas to think about, right? I can still think about it and be like, oh, it would have been cool if they capitalized on it, but it gives me those ideas still. Where the sequels, outside of Last Jedi, doesn't really give me anything. Like Force Awakens is just a cool plot in the sense that it gives you a lot of like, oh, this could happen and this could happen. What's going to happen next? Last Jedi gives you a lot of ideas and almost kind of cuts down a lot of it gives you answers, but just not the ones you want. And then Rise of Skywalker says, well, those answers didn't matter. We're giving you new answers that you were more expecting.
Rise of Skywalker could have happened no matter what happened in the first two.
Yeah, and I was talking about this with before the podcast, but if you cut out Last Jedi and made a couple minor changes, I feel like Force Awakens dovetails into Rise of Skywalker. But the problem is Last Jedi is there, and it makes it weird.
It's true.
I still feel like Force Awakens leads into Last Jedi. Okay, and then if you had a sequel to Last Jedi that sort of capitalized on different. Then it would have been fine.
Well, then it works because it's almost like how the prequels.
Yeah.
You have like Phantom Menace is totally different from Revenge of the Sith, but the way the flow works as well, it works well.
Yeah.
And I feel like you could have had that if you changed Episode 9 pretty drastically.
Right.
Kind of totally opposite direction and grounded it a lot.
Yeah, and so the problem is Rise of Skywalker attempted to go backwards. And when you go backwards, it doesn't feel like a natural extension of the story. Mm-hmm. And that's why, in my opinion, it fails. And another problem is it takes all the interesting, not all of them, but most of the interesting ideas in Force Awakens and Last Jedi, they feel like they don't matter anymore. So when you're watching those movies, it retroactively makes those movies worse because you're like, these don't matter. They didn't think about this. And a lot of times people don't even have the answers, but you want it to be like, oh, but those are really cool answers. Mm-hmm. Like saying Rey is a Palpatine is the laziest nonsense. Deciding
bringing back Palpatine in general was just dumb.
Was so terrible.
And it is. I don't like to say this, but it does retroactively hurt a lot of what it did.
And it not only does it retroactively,
now Palpatine was just the villain of every movie.
Well, yeah, and not only that, it retroactively hurts Return of the Jedi because if you want to go with the prophecy that Darth Vader destroys the Sith, that ruins it because he's back now, right? And
exactly.
But who gets to destroy it is Rey, a character I have no connection with because the movie doesn't ever give me anything to
part of the
connect with her.
It didn't suggest that she was. It's like,
yeah, and so
how do we think we can round this out?
I would just say that
I don't know. We probably kind of agree.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you were to say which one is the better trilogy, the prequels are more cohesive and better flowing trilogy. If you take individually the sequels, we spend a lot of time ragging on them, but when it comes down to it, you judge it critically.
Yeah.
They have a lot of merit and are
visually stunning and good acting.
They might end up as a higher average even. Actually, Episode 9 kind of brings it down a lot. But
I actually don't like. I think Last Jedi and Episode 7 are good individual movies. I would actually say that I think when it just comes to overall quality, like consistency, Force Awakens is the best.
I agree with that.
But because Last Jedi has the highest highs and lowest lows, but those lows for me are just like low because the 6-hour chase scene.
You think it's bad for you? I'm trying to like it.
I know, yeah. It's like them basically meandering, trying to figure out, hey, how are we going to hack the ship, not hack the ship, and then her being like, haha, I had a plan all along, but then that plan didn't even work anyway. Mm-hmm. It's like, it was just aggravating.
And you get what they're trying to go with the failure aspect, but it's also like you kind of waste their time with that.
Yeah, and it's like nothing made sense. And then Last Jedi, I felt like, although I like some of it, their need to continually... Camera died, replaced the battery, we're back. But yeah, basically, what was I saying? Something about the subverting of expectations in Last Jedi. I felt like Last Jedi, he kept doing it over and over again. And then you have, obviously, Snoke dies. Then they go to the planet, and then Luke's there. And he's not there. He's like, oh, and Rose saving Finn last second, which doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so much.
Sucks. That was a cool moment.
Yeah, and there's so many like plot twists. And I get that might have been as intentional, and Luke even says something along this isn't going to go the way you think it is. And I think that's like a line that defines the entire movie. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, it's so much of it, it doesn't flow. It almost felt like they prioritized making things like twists and stuff as opposed to making good decisions at times. Mm-hmm. And so that was as issue with Last Jedi. And then Rise of Skywalker as a movie, like I said, visually stunning, but it's paced very poorly. And a lot of the things, movie moves fast, but it feels slow. And it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe that. A movie that moves fast but feels slow. It's like, because it felt like we must be reaching the climax.
Well, it just means the pacing's off.
Yeah, the pacing's off, and I guess it's kind of satisfying if you look at it as an individual film to see Rey defeat the Emperor or whatever, but as a trilogy, it makes Return of the Jedi worse, Force Awakens worse, and Last Jedi worse.
Here's one thing I could say about the Rise of Skywalker that I liked is the ghosts they brought back. Or I don't know if they even brought back the actors. I actually never ended up looking into that.
Yeah,
I believe some of the actors for the Jedi were brought back.
Yeah,
to be the Force Ghost voices in Rey's head.
Yeah,
I'm like, it's cool.
Yeah, and so that was.
I wish they would have.
Yeah,
that would have been a cooler way to actually defeat the Emperor, is bring them back as Force Ghosts. Yeah. Even that might have been kind of dumb, but that's at least, it makes more sense than Rey using 2 lightsabers, and the Emperor keeps electrocuting himself.
He likes to do that though.
He does.
He like to do it. He does in the prequels too.
He loves his own electroshock therapy.
Maybe it's like a kink for him. Who knows?
He's high on his own supply.
Exactly. Doesn't listen to Ice Cube. I'll tell you that much. I think, but yeah. So I guess to put a cap on it, the prequels has such great ideas and world building.
So I had another good one for the prequels. Is you could say that it has a negative effect of it when it came out is that it did kind of subvert those expectations, but without being conscious about it. So you have to think about when that came out. The only context you had for people our age, we grew up with the prequels, so we probably saw it 1 to 6.
Yeah.
But when you had been alive for 30 years and had that, or I guess 20, you've been alive. You had the original trilogy in mind for 20 years, and then prequels come out, and Anakin is probably very different from what you would think the ideal Darth Vader would be.
Right.
And a lot of things are just different in not a good way, like the way Yoda's portrayed, and there's a lot of things that don't quite add up, which is, it's still a common thing when they put in content that takes place before the original trilogy is kind of retroactively makes the trilogy not make sense. Some parts of it just feel weird.
And I agree, but I think a plus of the prequels there is that you know how things are going to go, in a sense that you know where Darth Vader's going to end up. Mm-hmm. But they basically decide we're going to make a new story and we're going to make it a Shakespearean tragedy. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the prequels, right? The story of Star Wars is the rise, fall, and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. That is the spanning between the prequels and the original trilogy, and I think that's cool.
Well, I think it's about the Emperor being evil. That's the Skywalker saga, baby.
That's all 9 of them for sure.
The Emperor is evil. Dark side's bad.
And the dark side's bad. And I think my big issue is that with the prequels is not the ideas. It's not executed well. Mm-hmm. It's not the special effects are dated, and it didn't look great even at the time until I think like episode 3 looked pretty good, and I still think it looks decent. Yeah. But there's a lot of just weird things that happen, and I get that they're movies made for children, and I'm a grown adult.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in our 20s talking about Star Wars. So.
Yeah, so I get that maybe I'm not the target audience, but...
Hey, at least you're not in your 40s still talking about The Last Jedi on Reddit.
That's true.
Going on YouTube cat videos saying, oh, still better than The Last Jedi.
Yeah, but I just think The Last Jedi, or not The Last Jedi, but the sequel trilogy, at the end of the day, feels manufactured by a machine. And it's like, it felt like the first one had to be to get people invested, and then you go in a new direction. But after it felt like after Last Jedi tried something new. Not that there isn't problems, they gave up. And they're like, all right, back to the machine. And what I'm left with is soulless nothing blah that's shot really well.
The tough part is that it has a ripple effect throughout the other things they release. Is the lesson they learn from that is to not take risks.
Yeah, and
just try to capitalize on nostalgia and reuse what works.
And I think
The Mandalorian season 1, when everything was original, was good, and then they started bringing back other things.
But then people are like, "Oh, well, Luke's here, so I'm happy." And it's like, but if I had to draw an analogy, you ready for this one? Sonic the Hedgehog. So
Sonic the Hedgehog and/or Spider-Man.
So everyone's always like, "Oh, the classic Sonic games are just so great, the original trilogy," and so then you get the other ones that are trying something new. But then Sonic 06 crashes and burns, so then Sega's like, you know what?
When secretly it was actually great.
Exactly. We're going to stop taking risks, because they went all out, but they just, for reasons, it didn't come out the way they wanted, trouble development. Yeah. And so then they're like, we're stop taking risks. So then they churn out the safest Sonic game, Sonic Colors, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, Sonic's back. It's great. It's just like we remembered in the old days. And then what happens is
Sonic Colors, but
it's fine. But I like Force Awakens, right? That's the thing. It's Force Awakens. But then it ends up leading to Sonic, and then they make Sonic Boom, which crashes and fails due to poor studio management. And then you get Sonic Forces, which is just a mediocre, aggressively mediocre, and that's Rise of Skywalker. Aggressively mediocre, reusing the same old level themes that we've seen, not trying anything new. Yeah. And you think to yourself, how did we get here? And so I think what I would want Star Wars to do in the future is to just do something new, and just give it to the talented world building. Prefer to have George Lucas involved, not in the directing or writing chair, but like just throwing out ideas that someone else can focus and conceptualize.
That's a common thing among Star Wars fans, was George Lucas works really well on a leash.
Yes.
Where you have to let him go off and make this thing, and then start being like, okay, but nope, he'll stop Jar Jar in it. Nope.
Yeah, and so I guess that's what I want from Star Wars. That's
to let George Lucas make one more thing before he dies.
Yeah, let him do.
Yeah, probably.
Let him make something special, and then but don't let him be like have 100% creative control, because you get the prequels, which
creative control, but also make sure that you edit it and just essentially cut things. But
yeah, I like the prequels more than the sequels personally, and I'm not even saying they're better, but just because I feel like it adds so much to the lore. I've gotten a lot of great video games out of it, and it introduces a lot of unique ideas that is expanded on the extracurricular media to varying degrees. But I still
prequels definitely had a good effect. Well, they had a better effect than the sequels on Star Wars because the sequels you get what Battlefront 2's campaign, which
is.
It wasn't bad. It was just
so.
Didn't add much.
Yeah,
it's what another story of wow, Empire actually bad. Let me turn good instead.
Yeah,
it's just the prequels. You had a lot that actually came out of it, and you had things that expanded the world well.
Right, and that's why I feel like for me the prequels was. Even though initially I can understand why, over time, I feel like the prequels are a net positive for me. And, I actually like some of the additions how it makes me rethink the original trilogy, where I don't feel that way at all with the new trilogy as unfortunately. And I like how they expanded on some of the ideas in Last Jedi, but because they didn't go anywhere with it, I just feel disappointed. And so at the end of the day, I don't have any reason to want to go back.
Well, for the record, I would say Tanner probably likes both, but maybe prefers the sequels.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle as the resident punished Star Wars fan.
That's you.
I just hate all of it. No,
That's you, man.
We do a lot of criticism. I would say I actually enjoy pretty much all the Star Wars movies. I can enjoy them. I think most of them are bad.
I enjoy the prequels. I don't like Return of the Jedi. I don't particularly enjoy that movie, and I don't particularly enjoy Rise of Skywalker. But the rest I can rock with.
Return of the Jedi is a tough one, just because the good things are a very small percentage of it.
Right, and that's
very dull and boring things are a very large percentage of it.
Yeah, well,
that's a good thing about the prequels.
Yeah.
So one of the good effects that I guess people don't mention this much is that the Ewoks obviously not a great execution.
Right.
And people were mad at the time because they replaced the Wookiees. That was going to be the original. They were going to go to Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
That was the original idea. But in the long run, maybe it's kind of better just because Revenge of the Sith actually executed Kashyyyk really well.
Yeah. And
they had the means to do so.
Yeah, and it's like almost like I'm glad they waited. And but I would just say that it's up to you. It's up to you guys to decide what you like better. If you just hate them both, like Kyle. I'm just kidding. Yeah. He just said he liked all the Star Wars movies.
Except for Last Jedi. It's the only good Star Wars.
It's your favorite one. It's your favorite Star Wars movie. But thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to wrap up this. I hope I can get Cousin Kyle back on the Podcastle at some point. It was great having you here. It's been fun.
So you I see you dressed for the part. And let me tell you, you said I was going to be on the podcast. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna dress up nice and get all good and nice. And then he said it was about Star Wars, and I'm like, never mind, I'm throwing on the XD.
Yeah, I mean that describes Star Wars right there. Lol.
That's what I was. This is all I have to say. That's my closing statement about Star Wars. XD.
Perfect.
I'll tell him my company's gonna cut off.
Yes. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Do you like the new format? We try different things. Just let me know. And thanks, Cousin Kyle, for coming on the podcast. It's great seeing you, man.
It's a good time.
Thank you. All right, see you guys next time. Later.